Welcome to the Mental Health Multiverse.
We're your hosts,
HB.
and LB. If you're also on a healing journey and enjoy pop culture, stick around.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Mental Health Multiverse. I'm LB, here with my co-host HB, and today we're talking about Cruella De Vil. Cruella De Vil. If she doesn't scare you, no evil thing will. I think that's as much as I can do without getting flagged for copyright. So here we go.
But we could really sing the whole thing. We could do it.
We could, and then just I don't know. Who would? No. Nobody has to know. If you want to hear the full song, check out on Patreon for
the
full cover.
We'll do it. We'll do it just for you.
If
we get one new Patreon subscriber, we'll do it for you.
Anyway, I'm really excited to have this conversation today. For those who don't know, Cruella is Heather's favorite. Is it like Disney villain specifically, or villain of all time?
No. What it really is that 101 Dalmatians is my favorite Disney movie, which I guess means that Cruella is my favorite Disney villain, because I just hands down, like, I feel like no other Disney movie compares. 101 Dalmatians is like it's pretty so perfect
good
to me.
It's really good. I we recently watched these movies, the animated live action, and you watched Cruella. I didn't have time for the first time in a really long time, and I was like, why was this not a favorite movie of mine? I have theories. We'll get into it, but I guess
I do want to say we had, like, season 1, we talked about like empowering Disney heroines, and when we were watching, I was thinking like, well, 101 Dalmatians is my favorite movie. It doesn't really have a strong empowering heroine. Then I was thinking about it. I was like, well, first of all, the villain is a woman, so amazing. Secondly, Perdita, also amazing. Like, she and Pongo go off and they find their puppies. But Nanny fights Horace and
dogs.
Yeah, I was like, is Nanny the empowering Disney heroine of this movie? Like,
100%, absolutely. I love her.
I love her so much. Great. But yes,
she's great. She held that household together, and she continued to hold that household together after they decided to keep 17 dogs. I have thoughts about that. We're not going to get into it right now, but I guess spoilers for those who haven't seen the movie in a really long time or ever. First of all, maybe pause here and go watch it, because it's so
I highly recommend.
So good. If you have a dog, if you just have animals. What I love too is there's no anti-cat propaganda for being a very pro-dog movie. Yay, claps, snaps, all the
yeah, Sergeant Tibbs does a lot of work he protects those dogs. He really protects those puppies.
I love him so much. He's so cute. He did so much for those puppies. I'll give a quick synopsis. And when I started watching the movie, I texted HB too, because I thought it was really interesting that the synopsis currently on Disney Plus really centers Cruella versus like the dog's experience, even though Pongo ends up being the narrator and we kind of follow the movie through his, perspective and lens. But anyway, so on Disney Plus, the synopsis is Cruella De Vil kidnaps all the Dalmatian puppies in London. And that's
so vague.
It's very vague, but also exactly what the movie is about. Missing some details there as far as like Pongo and his, he calls him his pet, Roger. Live a very solo bachelor life, and then Pongo gets it in his head that Roger needs a person, needs someone to love and care for him, and I guess get him out of his hermiting solitude. And he ends up seeing Perdita, the Dalmatian, and her pet Anita, which is really fun. And that scene's really cute. That scene is really iconic, and I think really set the tone of like dogs look like their owners, or owners look like their dogs.
Yes, so, I do love that scene where he's like peeking them out. Yeah.
Also, the animation is just beautiful and amazing. Like, it's that old school, so the animated movie came out in 1961, so it's that old school watercolor background. It's just so good. Anyway, okay, I should continue.
Yeah, the intro, how you're like, oh, Disney movies used to do the full credits before the movie started.
Mm-hmm.
And that intro is so cool that I like actually watched it as a kid because it's just a bunch of polka dots bouncing around. It's very artistic. It's really engaging, even though it's
Yeah.
just opening credits, which is
And
really
the
cool.
jazz is just very like catchy and happy and poppy and fun. And yeah, it's a fun time. This is I mean, despite the premise, it's a very fun and cute movie. So anyway, Pongo sets up the owners and they have this like not very cute meet cute and they fall into a lake. It's a whole thing. They end up getting married. Pongo and Perdita end up having Dalmatian puppies. And Cruella in this version is Anita's schoolmate, which I had questions about because Cruella looks significantly older than Anita, but that's fine.
She's also a smoker, you know, so maybe that's what it is.
Kids don't smoke. She does. She looks significantly older, and that's like the whole connection as to why she wants Dalmatian fur for a coat, because she meets Anita's dogs and she's like, oh my god, they're so beautiful, I want all of the puppies. But when the puppies are born, they don't have any spots, and she's like, mongrels. I don't know her whole spiel, but she calls them mongrels. And then they're like, they don't get their spots till later, and she's like, well then I'll buy them all. And I had questions about that, as far as like, why can she just open their door? Why is she still friends with them? Or why is like Anita still friends with this horrible, horrible woman? Yeah. So anyway, they decline. And Cruella hires two thugs to go kidnap the puppies in the middle of the night. Nanny fights them off as best as she can while Roger, Anita, and the two dogs are out on their evening walk. Unfortunately, she gets locked into a closet, the puppies get stolen, and then they go on this whirlwind adventure to find the puppies. And I thought it was really cute the way that they kind of do it. They like, the humans are kind of useless and helpless, and so the dogs take it upon themselves to find the puppies, and they use the, what is it, the twilight
bark.
Yes, the twilight bark. And so it's just them barking on a hill. And so now every time I hear a random dog just barking, and instead of being like, god, that's so annoying, we'd be like, no, they're spreading information to help their fellow dogs.
Yeah.
That's what I'm gonna tell myself so I don't get irritated. Anyway, and so through that, they're able to find the puppies. It turns out that it's not just the 15 puppies, it really is all puppies in London. And so that adds up to be about 99 through the efforts of Sergeant Tibbs. And is the cat Sergeant Tibbs, or is the dog Sergeant Tibbs?
The cat is Sergeant Tibbs, the dog is Colonel. This is a mistake I have made in the past, and I apologize to anyone I have harmed.
Thank you for taking accountability. Okay, so Sergeant Tibbs and the Colonel work together to free the pups, and they meet like a black lab, and they cover themselves in soot, and they try to deceive, blah, blah, blah. All the while, Cruella and her two thugs, I forget their names right now.
Horace and Jasper.
Horace and Jasper, who very much resembled the two thugs from Home Alone, and they go on this whole Home Alone experience. Anyway,
yeah,
they're all out searching for the puppies. Of course, Cruella is the one that finds them, because Horace has all these ideas about what the dogs are doing as far as like trying to throw them off their trail, and Jasper's like, no, dogs aren't that smart, but they are. They almost give him the slip, and then a series of events happens. Corella's car gets smashed into a billion pieces, and the puppies are safe. They make it back to their home, all 101 of them, and Anita and Roger decide to keep them all.
Yes. That's a lot. It is a lot of dogs. And I think that's the last we see of Cruella too, which I think is interesting because I feel like in many other Disney films, the villain gets punished in some way, and Cruella doesn't really.
Yeah.
Yeah. She doesn't. She just, her car gets smashed into a million pieces, and you see her calling Horace and Jasper fools and imbeciles, and that's kind of the last we see of her.
Don't we also hear like sirens in the background though?
That's true. Maybe that's indicating that they got arrested.
But for kids, you don't pick up on that. You're like, okay, so what happened? But now that we're adults, we're like, oh, the cops are coming. They can't escape. They're done for, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. To talk about the differences between the live action, I don't love that the live action included cops like as part of the plot, because I think that one thing I love about the animated version, the 1961 version, is that it's completely community driven.
Yeah.
And I really, really love that about it. And so for the live action, which came out in 1996, to have that sort of element of like you know, getting the cops involved. I guess they wanted to make the humans more involved because it is a live action movie and there's only so much you can do with dogs. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I was like, do we need the cops? Do we need them? Because everybody took care of everything. All the dogs took care of everything on their own,
Yeah.
just
That
purely
was
based on community.
that was the biggest difference I noticed between the animated and live action. And it makes sense again, like you said, because there's only so many things you can do with the dogs, but it really centers the humans experience in all of this, and the dogs just kind of are the B plot, it feels like. Also, my question is, was that the very first live action remake Disney has ever done?
So technically, Jungle Book was first in 1994.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I did look this up and let me see if I still have the page that it says. So this is AI overview on Google, so don't quote me on this. This is literally just from Googling it. It says The Jungle Book was released in 1994 and is considered the first live-action Disney remake of an animated classic. However, 101 Dalmatians came out in 1996 and is another early live-action Disney remake that some consider to be the first true live-action adaptation. So I don't know why that would be, but that's what AI overview said. So
I'm just quickly going to Google the 1994 Jungle Book because it's not even ringing any bells for me. Oh, it is ringing bells now. Okay, yeah, like Mowgli is a man, first of all.
yeah, yeah,
It's basically if the animated Jungle Book were Tarzan.
yes, pretty
Yeah.
much,
Okay.
yeah.
Got it. Yeah, no, I much prefer the I would much prefer to consider the 101 Dalmatians like the true Disney remake, just because I think it's so the Jungle Book animated
Yes.
versus live action is just so different. Moving on. Okay.
No, but I think it's valid to sort of say that the Jungle Book movie was like a vastly different adaptation because I think it takes on its own sort of life, whereas the 101 Dalmatians movie is almost scene for shot a
Yeah.
remake of the animated, except for some some key differences.
Some plot points and just the way they
Yeah.
crafted the story and blah 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 blah. Yeah.
Yeah. Like for example, making Cruella Anita's boss
Yeah.
instead of a schoolmate. I think that fills in some gaps and gives some more motivation and backstory
Yeah.
because I think Cruella's motivation in the animated one is really just like she's a bad person and she's
Vain. She likes material things because I think the whole thing too is that she's lost money. Like she used to own, or her family anyway used to own this really gigantic mansion, this house that they called Hell Hall. And then it's mentioned like no one's lived there for years. So there's an assumption that she's lost all her money, but she's trying to hold on to that by having really exotic, really expensive things that she can't afford and is clearly using nefarious means to acquire, like a Dalmatian jacket.
yeah. And so in the movie it gives well also there's no necessary reason for the Cruella in the animated version to dislike Anita besides the fact that Anita won't give her the puppies, right?
True.
Whereas in the movie, there's a little more motivation for her to dislike Anita because she finds Anita to be talented and good at her job. And she says, you know, I don't want to lose you. And then Anita kind of makes a joke of like, well, that's not going to happen because I don't have any prospects. And then, of course, in the very like hyperbolic way, she runs into Roger and then like marries him the next day. So
Yeah. Yeah.
which is the same as it is in the animated. They pretty much just like get married. They meet and they get married. But which in the movie I just think they do such a good job of making it seem camp. Like it's just such a it's I
Mm-hmm.
love the movie so much. But it's it gives Cruella motivation to dislike Anita on top of wanting the puppies and not getting them. It's like you have betrayed me by finding someone else.
Yeah.
And this is the one thing that you said would not happen and take you away from your work, and it is now happening. Like right after you told me it wouldn't, basically.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
I think those are mostly the big differences that I had.
I think so too. Also, Glenn Close is a fantastic Cruella, like outshines everyone else in that movie just because she does an amazing performance there. Forgot about that and kind of about her as an actor, and then I rewatched it and I was like, oh my god, this is really, really good.
I mean, the whole cast is pretty iconic. Like, if you look at the
That's
who Horace and Jasper are,
yeah,
it's Mr. Weasley and Dr. House. Like, that's who Horace and Jasper are. Like, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Because obviously growing up I didn't get to watch Harry Potter. I didn't know who that guy was, but I always recognized Hugh Laurie because it's Hugh Laurie.
It's Hugh Laurie, yeah.
It wasn't until shout out to my little weekly movie night group. That's how I watched and caught up on 101 Dalmatians, both the animated and live action. And they were the ones that pointed out to me that that's Arthur Weasley. And I was like, cute.
Yeah. Also a phenomenal actor. But I do want to talk about the book a little bit because it was not until we were watching it through the lens of this podcast that I got curious about what the plot of the book is. Like, I knew it was based on a book, but I have never read it. I didn't really know anything about it. And I did a little digging on the book, and the book is very similar. It's got very, very similar plot points to the movie. There's a couple big things that are changed. So the book is written, it's called The 101 Dalmatians by Dodie Smith. I might be saying that wrong, but it's Dodie. Dodie Smith? Dottie Smith? Could be. It says the original title was The Great Dog Robbery, but I guess they changed it to make it more appealing, but that was before this was turned into a Disney film, I think. So anyway, Pongo and Mrs., so it's a different name for Purdy. Pongo and Mrs. live with the new...
Yeah, she's more than just a Mrs. She has a name.
It comes later. It's very interesting. So Mr. and Mrs. Dearly are already married. So I'm guessing that's Anita and Roger. They're already married and they have a nanny also. And they basically, Cruella is one of Anita's schoolmates. And so apparently Anita, or Mrs. Dearly as in the book, is like a financial wizard and has helped Cruella in the past with her like finances. Cruella is fixated. She's so fixated on fur clothing that she married a furrier, which is like a man who makes fur coats.
Oh yeah, that's kind of a difference between the animated and live action, is we get a glimpse of the person that's going to kill the puppies and turn them into coats.
Oh, that is true.
Workshop.
It is interesting that they add Skinner into the mix in the movie because it does add stakes too. I think it like helps you realize, because when you're a kid and you're watching the animated one, you're like, they say that they're going to kill the puppies a bunch of times, but like, how does it sink in? Probably not. But then in the live action version, you see this man who's like literally sharpening tools, and like you see the other skins behind him, and it's like, oh, this is actually terrifying. Like, they have put evil in physical form here. But anyway, so in the book, Pongo and Mrs. have a litter of 15 puppies, but Mrs. isn't able to feed them all. So the humans try to find a canine wet nurse for her, which I think is very interesting. And they end up finding a lost Dalmatian, like a Dalmatian who's been left in the streets, who has recently given birth to a litter. So she has milk. And so they pick her up and they name her Perdita, which means lost. I don't know in which language, but it says that Perdita means lost. And she tells Pongo and Mrs. that her puppies were stolen and that the reason that she was out and found was because she was looking for them. And so they do the same thing in the book, the Twilight barking, they end up finding the puppies, all of that. And it's actually Cruella's cat in the book who helps them, because Cruella's cat has had many litters and Cruella has killed all of the kittens and turned them into furs. So the cat deceives her and helps the dogs with the investigation. Another thing that I'm really glad they did not include, and Disney could have included this because it was the 60s and they have done much more problematic things, but apparently the Dalmatians are nearly captured by a group of Romani people in the book, and the barking network helps keep them from being caught. And that's when they roll in the soot to get away. It's not for Cruella. It's for this like group of not connected to anything. So I'm really glad that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But it's in the book. And
Strange that they kind of like took that part out, but then kept all of the racism in the Hunchback of Notre Dame. You know,
it's like, yeah, it's like, what? Pick and choose your battles, I guess, Disney.
I guess.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Who knows? Who knows? But basically, the puppies are all found, and the reason that the originals, so like Perdita and her, I don't remember what her partner's name is, her dog partner, but they had a neglectful owner. So what makes it 101 Dalmatians is that it was 97 puppies and 4 adult dogs. Yeah. So it was Perdita, her partner, and then Mrs. and Pongo. Yeah. So I just thought that was interesting. And I think the police are involved it's Scotland Yard is involved in the book as well. So yeah. Prince, his name is Prince. I see it right here. So Prince is Perdita's partner's name. And they allow the neglectful owners allow them to stay with the Dearlys, and they become the 101 Dalmatians.
It's cute.
Yeah, there's a part of me that wants to read it and a part of me that's like, I think I've seen enough.
You get the gist.
And
yeah,
I'm okay with that. Yeah.
But I like
anyway, so that's the book. Yeah.
I was just gonna say I like the twist or addition that it's Cruella's cat that helps the dogs, because
Yeah, but there's not much more, at least in this synopsis, that they give on Cruella's background besides that she's obsessed with furs. So
Gotcha. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Some other differences between the live action and animated that I just thought of. In the animated, Roger is a songwriter, it sounds like, or he writes jingles for things. And so he's kind of stuck on that. And then in the in the live action, he's a video game developer, designer, creator. And Cruella is both of their inspirations, and the way that they kind of use her and make money off and profit off of her namesake and who she is as a person is pretty funny.
That is funny. I also liked the nod to the original animated in his video game. Yeah. And it was ahead of its time in 1996. Like, video games weren't quite what they are now. So
no, yeah. Video games have since blown up. Of course, the comment that one of my friends made while we were watching was like, you can tell this isn't a real video game because graphics in the 90s did not look like that. But apparently they were talking about there was an actual 101 Dalmatians video game that you could play on your computer. I don't know if you ever got into that.
I don't think I did.
Apparently one of the mini games was to like cover the puppies in soot so that the villains wouldn't recognize them, and then you dust them off later.
I love that.
Yeah, it's
perfect. I very, very love that.
So we talked about the differences of the live action versus animated, both of those compared to the book. And then we get this live action Cruella, kind of Cruella De Vil's backstory, origin story. I've only seen it once, and I did not have time to rewatch it for the purposes of the podcast. I'm gonna let you kind of share that and
yeah, I had high expectations for this movie because 101 Dalmatians is my favorite Disney movie. Mm-hmm. And it met those expectations, but in ways that I wasn't expecting. And I really genuinely love this movie, and I was hoping that I would love it. But I think what I love about it the most, and I think what I tell most people about why I love it, is that I see it more as one of Disney's twisted tales rather than an actual origin story. Mm-hmm. I think you have to look at it through that lens before you can appreciate it for what it is, because it is more of like a twisted tale. And for those of you who don't know what a twisted tale is, there are like canon Disney stories that are different versions of the Disney stories that we know and love. So they are written by Disney. Disney hires people to write them. They are still considered like a version of canon, but they are not actually like exactly what happened. It is a different version of something that happened. Yeah.
To me, it's kind of like professional fan fiction almost.
No, that is exactly. I went to a fan fiction panel at Dragon Con because an author that I like was on the panel, and there was a Twisted Disney author there, and she was talking about her book Sally's Lament, which is about what if Sally discovered Halloween Town instead of Jack.
mm,
And they were literally talking about how the Disney Twisted Tales are basically fan fiction of Disney
yeah,
stories.
yeah.
So,
And also, just to like anyone who's like, ew, fan fiction, isn't that smut? No, not all of it is smut. Some of it is actually really good and amazing and fantastic. Don't disparage the fan fiction until you try it. No, but the reason why I'm like, it's great is because I have the Mulan one, and it's basically like, what if Shang died? Okay, so I have the Mulan Twisted Tale, and it's called Reflection, and the author is Elizabeth Lim, and it's, oh yeah, here we go. What if Mulan had to travel to the underworld? So it's like a fun little side quest that she has to go on before, you know, the actual plots. But they keep in like some of the dialogue, and I remember being like, oh, it's a fun way to work in the dialogue. So
yeah. And so like I go into the Cruella movie with that in mind, seeing it as more of like a twisted tale rather than an original like villain origin story. And the reason I think that is because I think there's a lot, they play with it so much that like yes, Cruella is a villain, but by the end of it, through the humanity of her friends, which is Horace, Jasper, the really cool shop owner whose name I forget, like she had a lot of help along the way and people to help ground her and keep her sort of human.
mm,
And at the end of the day, she didn't end up becoming the big bad villain that she really wanted to. And she made people think that she was. Like she made people think she killed those Dalmatians to make the coat. She made people think that she did all of these horrible things. And she was like, let them think these bad things about me. Let them think I'm the villain. And she knew that she wasn't, so that was like enough in the end. And I think that's what I really love about the story. I like that we get a very Cruella-esque character in Emma Thompson's character, the Baroness, who plays her boss. It is very Glenn Close in the live action remake. And it's still in the world of fashion. The costume design in this movie, amazing. Like Cruella basically has to one up the Baroness at all of her events as this like underground fashion designer and does such an incredible job with like using recycled materials because she's basically homeless. Like
mhm.
she is getting all of her materials secondhand or literally from the trash, and like it's just wonderful. I think the movie is like really, it's got a lot of heart. Like there are parts where it seems a little bit like she might have some sort of split personality going on. Is she
Mm,
Estella or is she Cruella? And when she lets Cruella out, she treats people really poorly, and then her friends call her out on it and they're like, we miss Estella, we miss the person who said thank you, we miss the person who said I'm sorry, we miss that person. And then Cruella kind of gets into a bunch of trouble and hits rock bottom, and then she's all alone and she finds out all of these truths about herself. And I'm not going to spoil it because I think it's a really good movie and I think you should watch it. But
yeah.
she finds out these truths that kind of blow her mind, and then she goes back to her friends and she apologizes and she's like, I want to take this person down and I need your help, and I'm sorry that I did not treat you well when I was Cruella, you know?
Mm,
So it's very, very different from the stories, from any of the stories that we've been talking about, whether it's the book or the live action or the
yeah.
animated version. It kind of takes on its own life of the character, but I think it's a really cool look at
Interpretation.
it. It's a
Yeah.
cool interpretation. Yeah. And I think like there's a lot of it that's very campy and over dramatic, like the fact that Cruella's mom is killed by Dalmatians. And you're originally like, oh, that must be why she hates Dalmatians so much. But like in the end, again, you see that she's like ends up protecting them. They end up like choosing her over their actual owner in the end because she actually treats them well. But like it kind of like took it there right away to get the audience in and be like, that must be why she hates Dalmatians because they killed her mom, you know?
No, that is interesting because from what I remember, from what I remember having watched that when it came out, I believe on Disney Plus, right? It was in 2021.
I
I
saw it
don't
in
think,
theaters.
oh, it was in theaters. Okay.
Hmm.
Anyway, I remember the takeaway being like, oh, they're just really trying to humanize this villain, because rewatching the animated movie, she just kind of sucks. Like there's no redeeming qualities about her. She like walks into Anita and Roger's house, immediately insults them for being poor, which then we find out she's poor. You know, judging Roger for pursuing a career in music and all of these things, and very heartless in the way that she's like just letting her cigarette ash fall all over their house, letting her smoke just drift all over, seeing the dogs not as pets, but just as like a resource to be used and discarded, you know, just very heartless, no empathy, selfish, vain, just like a lot of like, you know, we've been talking about some villains now, and we always talk about like who's the evilest villain. And I think we haven't talked about her yet, but I think she's definitely up there in the way that she's just so willing to harm animals.
Innocent creatures. Yeah. I think I think it's like one of the reasons why she's not on our radar as much is because she doesn't even come close to getting away with it, maybe is why,
Yeah,
you know?
actually commits genocide. So I still think he holds the number one spot, but Cruella.
Right. And she like and also like when we speak of Ernesto de la Cruz, like he did
Oh,
kill someone,
yeah,
right? So it's like, but like we think of Cruella and it's like she had this grand idea to kill 99 puppies, which is that's
an
like
insane amount
if
of
you want
animals.
yeah, if you think about like a villain, you're like this person kills puppies, like that's like really bad. Like that's evil, right? Like that's and she does it seems like she has no soul. It seems like she has no heart because multiple times in the animated version she says, "I don't care what you do, drown them, knock them on the head." Like it's just like
Yeah.
I was watching this as a kid, like I must have been so scared of her.
Yeah, yeah, no, and her even her character design is very creepy, and yeah, she just really sucks in that movie.
I do
No,
love like to speak to a little bit of her like character design though. Incredible.
oh,
She is
very well done.
her well, first of all, her hair is iconic. You see half black, half white hair, automatically you think Cruella. It does not matter who it is.
Yeah,
That is a signature villain design right there.
yeah,
Fur, also signature to her. The long cigarette stick. I know there are other characters that have it, but like, you know, very
yeah.
signature to her. The car that she drives, also
Yes.
incredibly signature to her. I didn't notice this until my most recent rewatch, but her bedroom setup is also really freaking cool. She's got like this giant pink headboard and she has a phone that is the devil, which I'm just like this is
Oh, I didn't notice that. That's so
yeah,
funny.
her her like rotary phone is also has like the devil on it. I was like, where do I get that? First of all. But also when Anita asks, "How are you?" she just goes, "Miserable, darling, as usual, perfectly wretched." And I'm like, who says that? Like that's amazing. And
No, as a villain, she plays the villain part well. She is a good villain, but she sucks.
yeah, no, totally. She sucks.
Like she
She's scared. That's scary. That's like her desire to use innocent baby puppies to like but I also think it's such a great commentary on the fashion industry and
oh
also
yeah.
maybe this happens more in the live action than in the animated one but like the farm animals help them in the animated one too but in the live action she gave this speech about how they're all just going to be on someone's plate soon and I was like damn
Yeah.
ouch like I am a meat eating person
I
and
know. I
this
was thinking the same thing. In that moment, I was like, I should become a vegetarian as I'm eating my pepperoni pizza. Oops.
but like it just I think like it's just like this stark commentary on like the like farming industry and on the fashion industry and on all of these industries that we tend to not really think that much about like capitalism consumerism like
Because it
it's
doesn't directly impact us because we're not the animals, we're not the things being killed and consumed.
yeah but it's just like a fascinating commentary on that
Yeah.
which it's not like super direct, but I do think
There's something to be said about all of that. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
and about, I know that you had notes about this too, but also about the like the level of neglect that some animals receive, you know, like Anita and Roger are sort of seen as martyrs because they're taking on these 101 Dalmatians, because if they didn't, they would just go to the pound, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, well, we have a responsibility to keep all these dogs then, because what else are we going to do? What else is going to happen to them, you know?
Yeah. In the live action, it wasn't even like, we're going to create a rescue or a Dalmatian sanctuary. We're just going to, now that Roger's video game has hit the big time, we're going to take all of that money, buy a big house, and keep all of them.
Yeah.
And I got, I don't want to say mad, but I had some feelings. And like, I think it's just because, you know, applying it to my real life, I work in the pet industry. I'm around dogs all day, dealing with nutrition and health and how to take care of them, how to train them, how to treat them as part of a family, not just like an animal that lives in the backyard, you know? And so I was like, I don't know enough about Roger and Anita to know that they're going to take the best care of all these animals. Like, yes, they have money now, but that's not a guarantee that they're going to get the care, love, attention, stimulation, enrichment in their life that they deserve. Like, just because you have a lot of land doesn't mean you're using it well to their advantage, you know, whatever. So that was like my biggest issue with the movie was in the end then being like, we're gonna keep all of them and we're gonna raise all of them. And then in the live action, they go into this long spiel about how, you know, it's Pongo, Perdita, their puppies, and then the other puppies, and their puppies. And I was like, oh, you need to
It's too many.
you need
Yeah.
to get them spayed and neutered, and they should not be procreating. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Very
Did you
irresponsible.
not watch Prices Right? Come on.
Very
Have your
irresponsible.
pets spayed or neutered. But in the book, it's some sort of karmic thing happens where the Dearlys are able to take over Hell Hall, and in a
Oh,
twist of fate, they end up buying Hell Hall, and that's where their dynasty of Dalmatians takes place, is like at the Hell Hall, which I think is pretty cool.
that's kind of cool. I like
Nice
that.
little full circle moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I mean,
In the
it
book.
still doesn't show me if they are responsible, but yeah, I like the justice and karma in that.
Yeah. So normally we talk about our first experiences at the beginning of the episode, but we got kind of like talking.
I don't want to say.
We had a lot to say. I have a lot to say too, so I'll let you go first. Like, what were your first experiences with any of these movies? How did you feel about them growing up, etc., etc.?
Yeah, this movie surprisingly was not in my rotation a lot as a kid, and one of my theories as to why is that I was actually terrified of dogs growing up. And I feel like people who might be listening and know me in real life are like, what? Like I said, I work in the pet industry. I've had dogs. You know, Bamsey was the love of my life, and every dog I see, I'm like, can I pet the dog? Can I say hi? Are they allergic to anything? Can I give them a snack? You know, I'm that person. So sorry to anyone who's met me on the street. Anyway, but growing up, I don't know. I just like I never really watched this movie. Like I remember having the VHS. I remember getting the sequel, 102 Dalmatians, Patch's Adventure or whatever in London. They go back to London. They're already in London. What am I talking about? Anyway, Patch goes on his little adventure, and I like vaguely remember that one, but I remember having both VHSs. Anyway, but I don't remember watching the movie all that much. Even as an adult, it's not one. It might be now because it's so freaking cute and I love it. And then the live action, I do remember watching as a kid, and there are definitely scenes that stick out with me to me. And Cruella, I watched when it came out on Disney Plus. I did not see it in theaters. I remember thinking it was one of the better live action adaptations or remakes or movies or whatever that we've gotten. But I I don't know. I mean, it stood out to me in that way, but I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm gonna keep rewatching it. But I think that's just because 101 Dalmatians is not like part of it's not a core memory for me. It's not part of my lore, you know. But that may
Yeah.
change. It only took however many years. But
Yeah, you never know. Well, obviously I've said this is like my favorite Disney movie, but Hallie's been on the podcast before. That's my younger sister, for anyone who doesn't know. We talked about her favorite movie of all time, which is Bolt,
Mhm.
also about a dog. Like we loved dogs growing up. The rotation of Disney movies at our house were all dog movies, and not just Disney movies. We've also got All Dogs Go to Heaven in there, which it's something I don't know what All Dogs Go to Heaven is, but yeah, All Dogs Go to Heaven heavily in the rotation. Oliver and Company heavily in the rotation. 101 Dalmatians, like all
Balto.
of like. See, not Balto so much for
Oh,
Hallie. Probably for me, no.
it's so good. Okay. Anyway,
Yeah, I actually don't know that I've ever seen Balto, which
no,
Hallie would kill me
I,
for, I'm sure.
at least once an episode, I mentioned something and you're like, never seen it, and I'm like,
Yeah, but like we were big dog fans, and I watched 101 Dalmatians so much as a kid, but I also really loved the live action adaptation. We saw that in theaters. I definitely know that I saw that in theaters. I was like 6 when it came out, and I collected all of the Dalmatians that you could from McDonald's. They had this like giant poster, and you could like they literally I think had 99 puppies that you could get, like 99 different Dalmatians you could get. And I became obsessed with Dalmatians, like
hmm.
obsessed. Like I wanted one. And I remember my parents telling me that we were not getting a Dalmatian because they weren't kid-friendly breeds. I don't know if that's true, but they did not get us a Dalmatian because of that. We ended
So
up getting a black lab
my
instead.
friend said something very similar when we were watching it because she really wanted a Dalmatian and her family didn't get it, and said the same thing that apparently they're not very good with kids. So I looked it up, and it's not so much that they're not good with kids, they're just a very energetic breed. And so they may
Mm.
not be good around small children because if they're not trained well, they don't know
I
how
was
to.
gonna say it may have had something to do with training. I think we ended up going with a black lab because they are like super like
They're a
easy
little
to
bit more
train.
gentle, yeah, a little bit
Yeah.
more trainable. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've met Dalmatians since working at the store. There are two that come in. It's a father and a son, which I think is really interesting. And I'd never met one in real life before. They're huge.
Hmm.
I don't know. They're big dogs. Like I knew they were big, but I always thought they were around like so Bamsey was a cattle dog and she was like 40 at her smallest, almost 50 at her largest, but she wasn't like a tall dog. Like Dalmatians are tall. Like
Yeah,
not like
they're closer to like between a Great Dane and a Lab in
yeah,
size.
yeah,
Yeah. Which
yeah.
I think is deceiving because in the movies they're shown as a little more like a
They're kind of
Labrador
yeah,
size.
they're
Yeah.
petiter. Petiter?
Yeah.
What? They're smaller. They're a little bit more petite. Well, especially Perdita. Perdita is very slim, very ladylike with her tiny little paws and tiny little face. But
Hmm.
yeah, they're a lot bigger than that. But I got to pet them, and they're so soft. And I am not saying that Cruella should make a jacket out of them. Like the texture wise, I get it. It's very satisfying. They're so much softer than they look. Like
Hmm.
and like the skin is very supple because they're very short haired coats, but when you pet
Hmm.
them it's like their skin is very supple and soft. And yeah, I
Yeah.
had a lot of fun petting them and getting
Even though we got our lab, I was still obsessed with Dalmatians. So like my Scholastic book fair purchases were always the posters that either had like a cat hanging from a branch with a very inspirational message on them, or any sort of dog, Dalmatian, golden retriever, anything. And my thing was that I always named them, and it was like their name. And I used to just name inanimate objects, and I would even like write down their names so that people wouldn't forget. And I'd be like, that's Lucky, that's Spot, that's, and I like when people came over, I would like tell them who my dogs were on my wall. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, how
That's
old
some
were
Heather
you?
lore. Probably like, I don't know, probably like 9, like 7, 8, 9. I don't know. It lasted for a while. I was very innocent for a very long time.
Although I was going to say it's probably a good thing your parents didn't get a Dalmatian, not just because they're a little more energetic and kind of hard to train, but apparently after the live action came out, there was a huge increase in like adoption and sales of Dalmatian puppies. And then and then people realize like, oh, either they're not good with kids, or oh, they're really energetic because it's a freaking puppy. And then they outgrew their puppy stage and like, oh, they're not very cute anymore. And so a lot of them were given back to shelters. A lot of them, because of that, had to be euthanized. It was really sad. So
That
I
is,
guess
yeah.
good on
I
your
think it's again
participating in that.
well, I think that's again like part of the commentary too of like
Novelty.
I don't yeah, I don't know if if Disney did anything about that. I would have hoped that they would have like made some sort of statement. I feel like I've heard other places, and maybe this is like more recently now, but it's definitely more popular to be vocal about like not getting puppies for children for Christmas because
Oh,
puppies don't stay puppies.
absolutely. 100%. Animals in general are not presents. They're a commitment. You just no. No, 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 no. It's not like, surprise, honey, I got you a puppy. It's like you need to be having these conversations, Be responsible.
Yeah. But anyway, that's not what this episode's about.
No, we're here to talk about Cruella. So we've talked a lot about like her character in all three adaptations, a little bit about her backstory. So I guess kind of going down the list that we made for our like introduction episode to this season, and then also our what makes a villain episode. We've talked a lot actually about Cruella's background and motivation. What are some psychological motivations behind the villain's actions? I think you mentioned, in Cruella, it's her mother getting killed by Dalmatians. Well, like the Dalmatians just kind of push her off a
No,
cliff.
that's so that is what they want you to think, right? That's why they made it was like
Okay.
a trick. It was like a nod to her not liking Dalmatians. That's her motivation, is that the Baroness killed her mother, not the Dalmatians. And that's what causes her to become Cruella, is that she's trying to one up this woman named the Baroness and put her to ruin, basically, as a part of revenge. She even says, there's a quote where she's like, there are 5 stages of grief and I'd like to add one to it, revenge. Like that's basically yeah, so that would be her motivation in that. But that I see that as more like a twisted tale. I don't connect that to Cruella the villain as we know her in the live action and the animated version. I think it's a separate motivation that is a nod to who she is in these other movies.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I guess we don't really get a lot of backstory then in the OG movies, and like you said, not really anything in the book. So I guess the main motivation for her in those is just she is vain, heartless, and just pure evil.
And yeah, and she wants those puppies. Like her motivation is that she wants to make a coat out of those puppies.
So actually, I just thought of something that you had said. Like you mentioned, a lot of villains actually are able to go through with their nefarious plans, and then it's the hero's job to kind of enact justice post, cruel act or whatever. Other than kidnapping the puppies, Cruella doesn't actually do any harm to them. With that in mind, where would you rank her in our like list of villains? Like most evil
Gosh,
villains?
I don't know. Like I would say that the intention is pretty evil. So it's pretty high up there. I think the fact that she didn't go through with it drops her down a couple notches, but
she had
she's
every
pretty
intention to. It was not her being like, oh, I'm going to change my mind. This is too much. This is too evil. I can't go through with it. It was just things
yeah.
outside of her control.
Yeah, and also the 2 people she hired to do it were imbeciles and fools.
Yes.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, like thank God for Horace and Jasper being idiots, because had they been really good at their job, we wouldn't have these 99 puppies, I think.
It would just be the 2 Dalmatians.
They would not tell this story. No.
Personality traits. What personality traits would you give Cruella?
I mean, you've already said vain, right? Very materialistic, like cold-hearted, not really caring about anything but her own self and her own,
Yeah. It's so it I know that there are people that actually exist who are very similar in that regard, but it just like I cannot wrap my head around someone being so selfish, so self-centered, that
Well, we talk about this in the What Makes a Villain episode too, I believe, where it's kind of like that Disney chose that line of like, especially in the older movies, right? Like this person is evil, they are the bad person. We're going to hammer it into your head that like this person is bad. So they come to sometimes go through like full extremes, like with Scar, with the Evil Queen, with, you know, all of these characters, right? So Cruella is one of those pretty original iconic villains that's just evil for the sake of being evil for the sake of the plot, right?
I'm skipping down a couple of different things. I'm kind of skipping over childhood and trauma because, like you said, that's really only relevant to Cruella. Relationships, we know how she treats her minions, and I wouldn't even call them allies. They're just minions at this point. She just treats them horribly. And well, from what I understood too from the animated movie, these are people that she's hired and paid, but they're not like friends. They've never really met. They haven't developed a relationship beyond this working relationship, right?
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, again, she's
And Horace and Jasper are actually like really scared to go through with it, which I thought was an interesting plot point I had never picked up on before.
yeah, yeah.
Like Horace is very much like, I don't want to go back to jail. I don't think this is a good idea.
Yeah. And
Jasper's
Jasper's
like,
really focused on the money. Like, well, we're gonna get paid, we're gonna get the money, we're gonna get out of here. This is our motivation to just do the thing and then get out. Yeah. Yeah. Relationships, coping mechanisms. What
well, she is a big smoker. She's definitely like smoky.
She's a smoker and a rage driver. So much rage. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So funny.
And redemption and change. Do you see any potential redemption for her?
Absolutely not. And I think that's okay, right? Like I think no. Okay. So I'll go to the movie Cruella and I will say the way that they set it up was perfect because it's not the original story, right? Within the context of the original story, I think no, because like we said, she had every intention on going through with that plot, and there is no path for change that I could see her on, whether it's the live action and they are arrested or whatever ends up happening to her in the animated one, right? Like there's no real path for change for her here. And I think being arrested is not enough, right? Like I kind of like the idea that's kind of happening in the book, which I haven't read it, so I don't really know, but it seems like Cruella being in ruin is what is the worst that can happen to her. And I guess that happens in live action too, right? She was like a top fashion designer, had, you know, her clothing design company, I don't really know, brand was like on top, and this puts her in ruin. So that to me is worse than her being in jail, right? But in terms of redemption, like I don't actually see that happening for her, and I don't know what would have to happen for that to make sense. Like I think a funny ending could be that like, you know, she ends up doing community service and has to be like work with dogs or something. I don't know. Like
yeah, like has to work at a shelter and like actually take care of animals, or like because you know volunteers at rescues and shelters, it sounds nice, but most of the time they're just like cleaning out their pens or like cleaning out their rooms and their poop and pee, and it smells really anyway. Yeah, that could be one, I guess, to kind of fill in the blanks and like kind of make up our own headcanon for it. I think in the animated, even though it's not really touched upon in too much detail, it sounds like maybe the DeVils were really high status and like had a really good reputation. And then because of all these things, and then with Roger's song, it just spreads like this really bad reputation of her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In ruin.
In ruin. Exactly. Yeah. Societal influence. I don't know if there were really any societal influences that like pressured or influenced her behavior other than status.
Yeah, I like this about the Cruella movie. And again, this is like more focused on the Baroness as a villain versus Cruella being a villain, but like status is really important in that movie. It really it's literally about how she's being perceived compared to Cruella. And it's like, she respects Cruella because she actually does think she's talented, and she thinks that the way she's sort of doing this like grassroots pop-up marketing is really clever.
Yeah.
And she even says that at some point she's like, but it's become me or her, and I'm only gonna and it has to be me, right? So yeah.
Yeah. So revisiting our kind of evil Disney villains list, Frollo is still at the top for me. Ernesto de la Cruz is number 2 because they actually, committed the murders. Cruella might be number 3 for me because, yeah, she had every intention. The puppies were kidnapped. She didn't really care what happened to them as long as she got her coat. And she just treated people terribly. So she holds the number 3 spot for me.
Should we start like a bracket? Should we
I
start
think
like
we
a
should. I think
worst
so.
Disney villain bracket? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. There we go.
All right.
That's LB's list so far. I'll have to.
Yeah, I'd have to go through the archives of my brain and be like,
I know, because we've also talked about Gaston. Gaston sucks.
but he
Murderous.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's not as bad as Cruella or Frollo or Ernesto de la Cruz.
Right.
We talked about Mother Gothel. Anyway.
Yeah. That's all I really have to say about Cruella. I think like, she's just a bad lady.
She's just a bad lady. Yeah. And I'll give her props for that. As far as villains go, she is very clearly a villain through and through. No moral ambiguity there.
Oh, I also had a note sort of about her reaction in the animated one to being told no, because she had no other sort of like motivations, right? Like when they said no,
Yeah.
she just like
Yeah.
starts screaming and she's like, "You'll regret this." Like whatever she said, she rips up the check and whatever. And it's like, is Cruella rejection sensitive? There's a part of me that's like, why doesn't she like hearing the word no? It's very interesting to me.
Yeah, I could see that. Would you classify her as a narcissist?
I would, but I think it's like to that extreme that we've been talking about of like pure Disney villain sort of narcissism, a little less more like how realistic narcissists would show up. Like if someone shows up in your life how Cruella does,
yeah,
like that's pretty extreme. So like maybe take a look at that. Maybe take a look at that. But yeah, I think she's like an extreme case of it, which is why I sort of like in the live action version they kind of up the stakes in making her this fashion Mongol who owns a brand, and that gives stakes to why she behaves the way she behaves. And in the animated version we just really have no context as to why she is that way.
Yeah she just sucks. She just sucks.
Yeah,
I also
think she's a great villain though.
Oh yeah, she is a good villain as far as what we've talked about in What Makes a Villain, but she's a bad lady.
Great villain, bad lady.
Wait, I want that on a shirt of like an outline of Cruella.
We should make merch. I have a whole ass Cruella cosplay.
I forgot I was gonna ask you if you've done a Cruella cosplay, because if you haven't, you should, and you should dig up photos of it for such of them.
I will. Also, fun fact as we wrap up, I cosplayed as Cruella for the most part because when the movie posters were coming out for the Cruella movie, a lot of people said that Emma Stone as Cruella looked like me, and it's my eyebrows. I have Disney villain eyebrows, and I know this about myself. So you can't see them. They're very arched. I have the villain arch, everyone. I know this about myself. But yes, I did.
But very nice. Very nice.
You wouldn't what? What did you say?
I wouldn't say you have villain eyebrows, but
you don't think so?
I do see the arch now. Now that you've pointed it out, I'm gonna be like,
yeah. I have very high arches. Some of my eyebrow ladies try to take my arch away, and I'm like, what are you doing? I need that. I need to look like a Disney villain, please. Thank you.
Yes. That's so funny. Anyway, that's all my notes. Thank you for listening, and tune in to the next episode.
Yes, I will end with a quote from the Cruella movie. Cruella, born brilliant, born bad, and a little bit mad. But yes, so thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Mental Health Multiverse. You can follow us on TikTok and Instagram at mhm.thepodcast.
And join our Patreon for as little as $3 for bonus and additional content.
You can follow both of us on Instagram and TikTok, HB at Heather Bodie.
And me, Marissa/LB at littleben_notbroken. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with a friend.
Screenshot it and tag us on Instagram or leave us a rating or review.
Thanks again, and we'll talk to you again soon.